Hi, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Lunchtime Theater. My name is Judy Rawlings. I am the Art Education and Outreach Director here at the Herberger Theater. No, not here at the Herberger Theater Center. The Herberger Theater Center is way over there. And we would all be at the Herberger. However, as you all know, life had something different in mind for us this year. Were we at the Herberger, I would probably be doing my usual curtain speech and telling you all about the resident companies and asking you to fill out a survey letting us know what you think about lunchtime theater. And then I would tell you that every month I put all the surveys in a great big hat. However, my boss only lets me pull out 2. However, those 2 incredibly fortunate folk win free and clear, no strings attached. Wait for it. 2 tickets to lunchtime theater, yay! Hopefully sooner than later, we will be back at the Herberger Theater Center. But in the meantime, we have been speaking to some of the lunchtime theater artists. And today we're going to talk to Larissa Brewington of Gray Matters Incorporated. Say hello, Larissa.
Hello.
Okay. But before we talk to Larissa, I would like to introduce you to someone who needs no introduction. My associate, but basically my partner, who does more for lunchtime theater than I could even begin to enumerate. But here she is, Mary Robinson.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, Larissa. Nice to see you again. Hi, everybody out there in virtual lunchtime theater land. It's nice to connect with you, even virtually. We can't wait to see you back in our CAX Theater again, hopefully very soon. We were so sorry that we missed so many shows through the spring and now our summer as well. But Judy and I have been very busy working on our new season, the 2020-2021 season, which is our 20th season of Lunchtime Theater. So we are looking forward to sending out all that information to you and seeing all your wonderful smiling faces back at Lunchtime Theater very soon. But until that time, stay in touch with us, fill out those surveys anyway, let us know what you're doing, and stay healthy and stay cool. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mary. Before we start to grill Ms. Brewington here, I want to talk a little bit about our relationship and how we came to know each other and so forth. The first show that Larissa brought to Lunchtime Theater was called Quality Time, and it was a comic touching portrait of a mother and daughter relationship as they both prepare for the daughter's wedding. That was in 2007. And then in 2008, she brought An Evening with Harriet Tubman. And in that play, Larissa herself played Harriet with all her grace and charm and talent. And it was a great production, wonderful performances. And at the end of it, I began to think, we could possibly celebrate Black History Month every year if Larissa and Gray Matters were up for it. So I spoke to Larissa and she said that she was. And so off we went. Since then, Larissa Gray Matters has been in 14 seasons and done 15 plays. A couple of seasons we lost company at the very last minute. And so I called Larissa and I said, could you jump in and do something? And like Superwoman, she did. Something that you might not know is that Larissa writes all of the plays that she puts on at Lunchtime Theater. She often acts in them and she often directs. So you talk about a Renaissance woman. And I have a question for you, Ms. Brewington. Many of the characters that you feature in your historical pieces are people we have never heard of. And I wondered if you'd speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think it's important to talk about the people, the people that are already famous or legendary. But what I love about writing for Lunchtime is that I can go very obscure and get into stories that people haven't heard of. I think that's important too, to know about. The thing that I enjoy the most during talkbacks are people saying, I never heard of this woman, I never heard of this man, where did you find this? So I think that's important because it forces people to dig deeper than just Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Great, thank you. And yeah, and they're all very, very interesting characters, and hopefully someday they will be in the history books. Here are just a few of the shows that Lunchtime Theater has has put on featuring Gray Matters. Into the Blue, a story of Bessie Coleman, the first African-American female pilot and the first American of any gender or race to hold an international pilot's license. Frederick and Ida. This is about the relationship between Frederick Douglass, a former slave turned orator and writer, and Ida B. Wells, an anti-lynching activist and journalist. Hour of Decision. This is the story of Daisy Bates, who played a leading role in the integration of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. Legacy of Justice, the story of Ada Lois Sipewell Fisher and her fight to obtain a law degree from the University of Oklahoma in 1946. March. In 1963, 250,000 people marched on Washington, D.C. to protest the ravages of segregation. The many women who were involved in the planning of this march were noticeably absent from the list of speakers that included Martin Luther King. Larissa's play, however, does not forget these women. And I asked Larissa if she wanted to speak about the Black Lives Matter movement at this point, and she said that basically all of the years she, Gray Matters, have been presenting shows at the Herberger, the focus has been on history and Black Lives Mattering. Indeed. Thank you, Larissa. So what do you think? Shall we go on and grill this woman, Mary?
Oh, I think it's a great time to get started.
Okay, you first.
All right, so Larissa, I've known you for many, many years, but there's still so many things about you we don't know. So tell us a little bit about you, your history, how things got started with you.
Well, I basically started off as an actor. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. And when I moved out to, while I was there, I'd only written 2 shows. I had one about elderly abuse and then Harriet. So when I moved out here, it took me 8 months to get here. I had to save money to get here. And by the time I got here, it's like all the theater companies picked up and moved to Seattle. So there was nothing going on. So over that 8 months, I'd been talking to a lot. I had a book called the Black Theater Network. And I was communicating with a lot of people in there. And then it trickled down to just one person, one costumer. And by the time I got here, everybody was gone. So I was going to start novel writing, which is always kind of a pain in the butt because it requires so much more than playwriting. But I'm like, you know what? I'll do the novel thing and see what happens. And then I ended up auditioning for a show, and then history rolled in from there. I was able to communicate with people who were like, hey, don't you write shows? Which I don't know how many people did. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. So when I sent my first show to Judy, it was basically just on a complete whim of just, hey, let me just throw this out there and see what happens. And that is how history unfolded. And now I do all these things that I never intended to do. So
we're very glad that you do. Okay, Gray Matters, the name of your company. Where did it come from? What does it mean? And so forth.
I wanted to have the name, my initial name was Phoenix Productions. And that was when I was in Pennsylvania, because I had a friend who wanted to use me as her auspice because I had 2 shows and I was doing a lot of acting at that time. So the playwriting was definitely on the side. But I got a call from a man who was like, you got to cease and desist using Phoenix Productions. So I ended up thinking, well, what if I'm going to write and I'm going to do this? What kind of name do I need that's going to be just bigger than just Brewington Productions or something like that? And I wanted to have shows where people thought about things and what they were doing, but I really didn't grasp that until I started doing shows at Lunchtime Theater. When you asked me, well, what is it called? And I said, well, I can't use Phoenix Theater, so I'll use the Gray Matters. And then over the time, it kind of became clear to me, Gray Matters, oh yeah, I want people to think about what's going on. So it was definitely a work in progress, name-wise, for the first couple of years.
Well, you know, I always think of it as gray matters because you always say you want people to think, you know, and gray matters between black and white and gray and so forth. I don't know. I think it's a fabulous name. So anyway, you're up, Mary.
All right. So, Larissa, luckily this past season, we did get to see you perform, which was wonderful. But what do you have in store for us coming up next season?
I would like to work on a piece with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I think that this is definitely a time to explore those two philosophies. The two men never got to meet. They met at the Capitol briefly for about 2 minutes. They said hello and goodbye, but they never got to get together and discuss each other's philosophies. And I think that would be interesting to see what kind of conversation would come out of that.
Great. Great. It sounds wonderful. We can't wait.
Mm.
Okay. So of all the plays that you've done for Lunchtime Theater, do you have a favorite and why?
I think I have two favorites. And the first one is Legacy of Justice, because I desperately wanted to be in that. And it was Legacy of Justice was about a Black female trying to get into the University of Oklahoma law. And she was 26 and I'm not. So I didn't want to cast that out because I was like, oh my gosh, she's such an amazing person. And she was so fundamentally a part of American history in that year that she was trying to get into the school, and the 3 years that she was trying to get into that school. So it was a huge cast. I love that. But the thing that I want to point out is that the set, when I walked in, because I often share space with iTheater, the set was white. And I walked in and I'm like, what's going on here? I can't work with, and I had to work with that. But after we put our set on it, people were telling me it's the amazing thing about having it be white is that you're living in this white world with this Black story. So people were seeing levels to it. It's amazing. So I think people walked away with something with that. And then my favorite has to be When Douglas Met Lincoln, the very last one, because I feel like that show just kind of came from the ether, and the performances of TA and Fred were amazing, and people were crying and hugging everybody, and just so it was just it was an amazing piece to work with. So
yeah, it absolutely was. Mary, you're up.
All right. So I know you've talked a little so that you've done a lot of acting and everything, but what draws you to Lunchtime Theater?
I think definitely the ability to be able to present. You've got these small pieces that you're presenting in this short amount of time. And I'm a person that I love details. So this has really honed my skills. My forte has always been 1X, but this has really honed my skills as far as putting a tremendous amount of information in the shortest amount of time possible, but also being able to entertain people. So it's the middle of the day, you're walking in, you're getting some theater, and you're going back to work. And I just think that that's an amazing opportunity for people to experience.
And you do it well. And I have to say here, I'm just going to jump in with the fact that when we do talkbacks, Larissa is always able to qualify every single thing she's put in her play. She's a research monster, I think. It's really, really fabulous. Excuse me. So can you tell me what other venues you work at, not just Lunchtime Theater?
Well, I get opportunities to do things with the Women's Bridge Initiative. I get to submit my full lengths, and sometimes they'll call me if they just need things. Now and then, Creative Company, I'm hoping to do a little more with them. Phoenix Theater, of course, yearly has their new festival of plays. I submitted to that, so I'm hoping that becomes a thing as well. So just keeping an eye out for things that aren't just specifically for females or for Black females or people of color, just looking to, you know, spread out and get things seen wherever possible. That's the life of a playwright. Wherever somebody asking you, hey, do you have a thing?
So what is your thing? Do you write? Do you act? Do you direct? What's your favorite?
You know, people ask me that. It used to traumatize me a little bit because I was like, no, I'm loyal to the acting. And now I realize, like, sitting and watching When Douglas Met Lincoln, which I obviously wasn't in that one, and just sitting there and saying, oh my goodness, I wrote this, you know, after playing all that Candy Crush and drinking all that rum, I wrote this, you know. So when I get to see it is an amazing experience. And then an act when you're greeting people at the end and they're telling you, oh my goodness, you were just like my mom, or you were just like my sister. So it really just depends. And then directing, especially when you're directing people who are able to absorb what you give them and give you incredible feedback there. So it's just the producing, and then the marketing. There are times where I do, you know, my own marketing, and I'll build a piece and I'll say, you know, this is amazing. I should go to school for this, you know? So it just depends on what at the moment is triggering what I'm loving. So.
Good for you. That's amazing. So is there anything else you want to share with us? Any good stories, bad stories? How are you doing during the pandemic? Are you staying sane?
I'm trying to stay safe. I've had a major creative rush. My job, I believe they believe it's essential. So I'm working every day, but I have had just a creative rush of things coming through. Like there's one project I want to do about massacres that happen in Black cities. And I've got the Malcolm X and MLK piece. And then Brown versus Board of Education, which I thought was going to be the next lunchtime. And then there's another piece called Celia the Slave, which is about the real life story of a slave who murdered her master and she almost got acquitted, but she ended up getting hung. But all those stories, I had the Celia one before, but all of those stories kind of came flying through in January. And I thought that was just so odd because I'm creative, of course, but there's usually, you know, one after the other, but I really feel like it was universe sort of telling me in a spiritual way that all of these things are going to be relevant at some point. So all of those pieces I'm just kind of working on when I'm not playing Candy Crush or Golf Battle. So.
Well, it's fabulous. You've been so terribly important to Lunchtime Theater. And thank goodness you're still continuing with us. We look forward to your next show and anything else that you do in town. So anyway, thank you so much, Larissa. Thank you. We loved hearing from you. Mary, thank you. And thank you, all you viewers out there in virtual Lunchtime Theater land. Please come back for our next interview. We look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe and stay cool. Thank you.